Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Madisonville Marine. Hey, it's coming up quick, March 2nd through the 5th. They're coming to Knoxville. It's the Downtown Knoxville Boat Show at the Downtown Convention Center. That means Madisonville Marine is going to be bringing all sorts of makes and models of boats to Knoxville. It also means great deals from Joe Special and his team at Madisonville Marine. Get down there and check them out this week or visit them online or see them at the boat show March 2nd through the 5th. All right. Tennessee's all about their defense. They've got assistant coaches that specialize on offense, specialize on defense. But if you remember, Mike Schwartz came in here a couple of years ago and everything before he left. There was like, boy, he's really our defensive coordinator. They really made a stress. There was a push toward the media. Everybody knew this. It got written about. You don't hear that with an offensive guy. My question is, you brought up the fact that you don't have anybody that drives. You kind of do the same thing on offense. You don't get easy looks. Okay, is it time to bring in an offensive specialist? Gentlemen?
Well, I think what's strange is that we saw this team, maybe even last year, sort of try to adjust to their philosophy and taking more threes. And you thought, hey, maybe a deeper team, they might be able to do it again this year. And then we heard going into the season about them getting out in full court and running a lot more. Well, that didn't play out.
No.
They still shoot too many threes. But my point is that I think there's some openness to adjusting to today's game, but it always seems to kind of revert back to where the principles are. So I don't think they would do it in terms of bringing in an offensive coordinator, because guess what? In football, if you bring in an offensive coordinator that runs the spread, but the coach wants to run the ball in our formation, and that's what his background in, then it's going to default back to that anyway.
For me, and I think I've said this on the show, I think their motion offense is like the hardest thing to defend as a coach, because I don't know what each player is going to do. They have reads and they can react to it and they can adjust, and it's hard to coach my players to prepare for motion offense. Now, when we're not scoring and I see there's some exposure to the team's defense that I want to exploit, I need to have play calls that I can call to exploit that. That's what we don't have. When our motion offense and we're running and guys are making shots, we look unbeatable. We're going to score 87 points because the defense doesn't know how to guard us because it's read and react. But when we're not making shots, when we're missing open threes, we need to have some play calls that we can go to put guys in position that amplify their strengths and allow them to create an easy basket. That's what we don't have as much at.
Well, with all the money they're making over there, Josh, should they hire somebody just to stand behind Rick Barnes with a handful of index cards and say, here's a play to call? They're not hitting, Rick. Try this.
Run offensive play.
I'm being smart alecky today because, again, I'm fed up with it. What are your thoughts?
Well, Josh Heupel got a big raise. I mean,
Let him call plays.
design something for space. 2 segments ago, we're talking about easier ways to score, so that's part of it. When we've seen Tennessee at its best offensively, they also had a really good inside presence that could help them in the inside-out game. The best they looked this season, I think, was the Texas game. Well, who had the best game of his career? Olivier Combo, where they were finding ways, pick and roll, he was getting shots to the basket, and they looked unbeatable the way they played. But they just haven't been that consistently
the thing with Comloff, when they've got kind of bigs that can match up with him, he doesn't seem to play as well. That was the deficiency with Texas, right? They had guards. They didn't really have the bigs as much. Like Mark said, I think when you're knocking down shots, you look good. Who's been slumping? Tyreek Key. In the first half, who's been off? Ziegler's been off a little. Even Vescovi's been off some.
Well, I mean, to me, and Barnes said in the postgame, it's consistency. Tyreek Key scored, 16, 20 points, whatever, 3 games ago.
Right.
Zakai's done the same thing.
But isn't that, for the most part, that's basketball, though?
Correct. It's the inconsistency, but Barnes doesn't have guys. You mentioned Olivier. There's nobody that has been consistently this year that they can call on. Josiah has been injured.
Let me ask you guys this, just very quick answer from some Vince. I'll throw it to you. Okay. Is it possible? We've heard him. There's been more stress on defense. He's a defensive coach. We know that. But when he had the last year of Williams and Schofield, it was more offense than defense. They didn't go anywhere in the tournament. They were all offense. We sat there and wondered, well, you don't go far in the tournament when you don't play defense. They don't go far in the tournament anyway. My question, though, is it possible he's being more defensive-minded this year because he looks at this roster the same way Mark did? He says, we don't have anybody that drives to the basket. We don't have anybody that can go get his own points.
Yep.
So we're going to have – the only way we're going to win is by going all in on defense. And that's why when any writer comes to town, it's like, man, they spent 2 hours of their 2 hour and 15-minute practice on defense. Is he doing this not, in other words, is this chicken or the egg? Is he doing this as a result of the fact he doesn't have the players to play an offensive game right now?
I think so. I think it is more that, or it's not just being defensive minded, it's sticking to the motion offense, which he feels like will give them the best chance to have success on offense. And Mark pointed to, hey, at some point maybe you got to call some plays. I don't feel like he has the guys that can go get their own buckets. But are they not able to get the buckets because, like a Julian Phillips, because he's always sort of defaulting to the motion offense, or does he not have that freedom?
Or does he have a hip flexor?
Or
no
does
doubt.
anybody who gets in there and misses an assignment on defense get yanked to the bench immediately?
Yeah, see, I think it's more Barnes'
anyway,
DNA,
let's
his
let-
coaching DNA.
Okay.
But,
let's let
but
Mark end it.
at the end of the day, what I would say is, I would take the Barnes, despite that, and
The
every
top
coach
15 in
has
the
issues.
country. Yep.
Yeah, like the way that he's recruited, the way that he's coached these guys, he's going to keep them in a top 20, top 15 program.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just what he's done. Now, we've got to find ways to. It's some of the easy stuff. Make a doggone free throw. We're 4 for 18 if you throw in one-on-ones yesterday that we missed on the front end. Get out in transition and make some layups.
Yeah, exactly.
Make some open shots. So some of it, we're harping on Barnes and the coaching staff, which they're at fault for a lot of it. But some of it is, to your point that you always say, is players at this level just got to make open shots
Bingo.
and make open free throws.
And sometimes you do, and sometimes you don't. That's how a 71% free throw shooting team can shoot 28% yesterday. And you hear coaches who, when they're at their lowest, when they're most frustrated, they admit, well, the shots didn't fall today. All this other stuff we do kind of comes down to, are you making shots or missing shots?
Barnes has said that. Yeah,
yeah,
sometimes
exactly.
I'm just wondering whether we're going to make shots today.
Yeah, he said it after the Alabama game. It just depends on whether or not we hit shots. So what's frustrating for me is I realize this is a show where we overreact because that's how people watch these things. I would rather just look at it one game at a time. Well, the Kentucky game was bad. But the problem is that's not how anybody looks at it. If we say, well, the Kentucky game was bad, I'll have 400 emails saying, but they were good on Wednesday,
Yeah.
and vice versa. So it's just, I think you've said it before. Down here in the South, we watch basketball with a football mentality. You're supposed to go undefeated, apparently. The reality is, as ugly as it has looked in February, you're still top 15. You're still probably going to get one of the top 3 or 4 seeds, or the top 3 or 4 line in the NCAA tournament. So, these are rich people's problems, let's put it that way. All right, Mark Pancratz, speaking of rich people, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming in here.
I'm working on that rich part.
It's all that sports source money he's making. All right. When we come back, everyone's talking about the SEC's new schedule format, but what should the SEC actually look like? If we could build the SEC of our dreams, how would we each do it? Let's have a little fun next. Come on back on the Sports Source.